In this episode, we'll be leveling up in every area of our lives with the help of a successful entrepreneur and motivational speaker. He's the founder of We Level Up Treatment Centers and Personal Development Events. He's also a facilitator of change. Welcome to the show, Ryan. How are you doing?
Oh, wonderful, Toby. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I really appreciate your presence here today. And while preparing for this conversation, I was just like speechless for a while, like reading your story, what you've had to go through in life. I'm like, oh, you are a strong person. Like you're no stranger to pains and to failures in life. You were born and raised in a high crime area. Losing your sister at the age of 5, watching your parents divorce shortly afterwards, and becoming a victim of drug abuse and domestic abuse afterwards, and later juvenile detention. That's a lot to experience in a lifetime. So,
Yeah, man.
is it possible for you to share this story with us, share these experiences with us, so that we could, have a deeper insight to what you've experienced so far?
Yeah, and so what's interesting. What I've realized along my journey is that I'm not so unique. There's so many people that have gone through what I've gone through and have gone through much worse. But I
Mm,
think the difference and what's important and what I learned through my journey is what are you going to do with those experiences, right? Like, how are you going to take those experiences, take those pains, and use them to help other people or to make the world a better place or to transform people's lives? And so that's been my experience with my journey, because I started to put myself in proximity with a lot of successful entrepreneurs and a lot of successful thought leaders and those that are doing the very thing that I'm doing. And there are
mm,
some differences, but there's a lot more similarities. And what I've learned from them is the very thing that they were doing at the time that I met them, which I wasn't doing, which is what I'm doing today here with you, is sharing my story, giving insights and techniques and skills that I've learned along the way so that people can apply them in their life so that they can ultimately get to where they want to be. And a lot of times we never even knew that was possible. And so it's my
mm,
fiduciary responsibility to spread the message and to make a difference. And my mentor Tony Robbins says the gift of living is giving. And so
mm.
I've designed and built a life that is directly contributed to giving back, contribution, making a difference and impacting the world. And so again, I just want to honor you and thank you so much for allowing me to be here, because this is how I'm going to be able to get the message out there, is from individuals like you. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for also doing something positively with what you've experienced, because it's one thing to go through life and experience a lot of things, and it's another thing to take all of that and turn it to gold, and or turn it to something that could help other people on the similar path also. And without such stories like yours, there won't be any Mirror Talk podcast, basically.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes. One thing that touched me also was right in your story. In October 2001, you got into a car accident where you were pronounced dead at the scene. And 3 days after, you were awoken from a coma. That's a great miracle. That's something that does not happen to everyone. So, so I got so much curious. Like, I wanted to know, Ryan, I want to know your experience. How was it like being in coma? And how was it like, waking up from that coma?
Yeah, and that was when I really identified that there's a power greater than myself. And that was when I really accepted the belief that there is a God, and he was looking out for me in that moment in time. And looking back today, that was the starting point of my journey that I'm on today. I've been sober 21 years. And
Mm,
so, that weekend was, I violated probation at the time. I was up using drugs and alcohol the entire weekend. It was a Monday morning, October 8th. We were on our way to drop off the girl that I was dating at the time. And I remember sitting in the front seat, and I was holding a handful of Xanax. And I just remembered saying to my friend, the drugs aren't working anymore. I'm not feeling the effects of consuming this substance. And I remembered us just agreeing that we needed to start taking more. That was the solution. So my solution at the time was I need to consume more of these drugs in order for these to work.
Hmm.
And shortly after that, I don't really remember much. I was told later on that we were in a high speed chase. He was running from the cops. We ended up flipping the car, and I was pronounced dead at the scene of the crime.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was some heavy stuff, and I did wake up,
Hmm.
I don't remember exactly, but 2 or 3 days later, and it was very vague. I remembered I was handcuffed to the hospital bed, and I
Hmm.
remembered the police officer questioning me, and I wasn't really coherent. I was still, experiencing the trauma of the accident and probably sedated at the time. And then I woke up in the detention center, and I realized what had happened to me at that point. I was facing 25 years to life. I was 16 years old, getting ready to turn 17, and I remembered the court system telling me if I came back into the courtroom again, they were going to send me away to a juvenile prison. Once I turned 18, they were going to adjudicate me as an adult, and I was going to spend 25 years to life in prison. And so
Hmm.
that entire experience completely changed my entire life. And so today I can honestly say that I am extremely grateful for that moment, because it is what was needed for me to be where I'm at today.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. I mean, sometimes we go through some experiences in life so that we could have a turnaround. Basically, we could have a shift in our mindset and thinking. Yes, yes. So did you have like some kind of going to heaven and seeing God and all of kind of supernatural experiences that people have when they're in coma? Did you see angels in a coma?
Nah, man, it's like going to sleep. I don't really remember much. It was just black, and there was no pain and there was no fear. It was just I was unconscious. I didn't really
Mm,
remember much. I didn't have this white light experience. Um,
mm,
but looking back, there's so many powerful lessons that I learned from that. And one of the lessons, and one of what I've learned today is the dance of life is what we desire the most or what we fear the most. And so at
mm,
that time, I was afraid that if I didn't do something about my addiction or I didn't change my behaviors, I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison. And for
mm,
me, that was the leverage that I needed in order to make new decisions in my life, in order
mm.
to want to change who I was being at the time. And
Yeah.
so sometimes when we need to hit rock bottom in order to change.
Mm. Yes, that's true. Sometimes we have to eat rock bottom in order to start going back up again. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
Yes. And after that experience, you decided to change your life, to turn around your life, and you started searching for your life purpose. But this also led to a lot of challenges, difficulties, failures, disappointments. How are you able to navigate all of these challenges in life and finally find your purpose?
Yeah, and so for the next 5 years, I was thriving in recovery. I had a great support system when I was introduced to recovery, because my mother and my stepfather were sober at the time, and they introduced me to the 12-step program. And so I was thriving in recovery because I was so young. There's not a lot of people that come to 12-step programs that get sober at
Mm,
16 years old. And so I was, a fan favorite. I was the poster child for a 12-step program that I'm involved with here in my local area. And so I had a great reputation, and I was really helping a lot of kids that were struggling with addiction and struggling with mental health illnesses. And that was the highlight of my life during that time. Well, that
mm,
suddenly changed in 2005, 2006. My mother relapsed, and my father was diagnosed with cancer, and he had a year to live. And so all of those childhood traumas were re-triggered because my support system was just taken away from me. And so it was one of the most difficult times in sobriety for me because I was early in sobriety. I didn't know how to handle or manage those emotions. And so
Mm,
I quickly leaned into, or I quickly started to search for validation or search for a replacement because I was just going through so much pain. And so what I ended up doing was I started making greedy decisions, and that's when my commodities broker career started in 2007. And I
mm,
replaced my addiction with money and ego, and so that journey lasted about 5 years. I was a commodity broker. I ended up getting suspended. I opened up an investment firm. We were investing um, investors money into like wheat, corn, soybeans, oil, gas, gold, silver. And so when I was suspended from aggressive sales practices as a commodity broker, I then opened up a an investment firm selling physical precious metals. And so that
mm,
lasted a couple years, and then I was sued by the Federal Trade Commission for $10 million. And
oh,
so, yeah, man, it was definitely a very very difficult time in my life. Um,
mm,
and I hit rock bottom again. I was sued by the FTC. I'm pretty much going to lose everything. My fiance at the time left me, but today I can look back and say that was the best thing that could have happened for me because
mm.
it's the starting point to this version of Ryan that you are experiencing today.
Yeah, yeah, I believe that. I believe that, and that's what made you also, I believe, start your company, right? Or the center, we level up, where you help other people to go through their addictions and to cure from it. If I'm correct.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I went to a program called Onsite, in which
Mm,
they focus on like childhood trauma, experiential therapy, inner child work, and that was the first time I started to identify why I was making the decisions that I was making. I started to understand these unconscious patterns that were happening for me in my life, and so I started to identify the solution to my problem. And so the law of
mm,
exposure states if you are exposed to something, you can't be unexposed. And so once I went there and realized all of my childhood trauma and all my childhood experiences were the direct cause for why I was in the position that I was in, I knew I needed to do something different. And so that was the start of this new journey. And so I left that program and I contacted my father. I started to establish a better relationship with him. He gave me the startup
mm,
capital. We bought into our first rehab center, and we were a success. And so we just continue to grow and scale that business. And we've been in the business for 10 years. And my
mm,
father passed away just recently. He passed away December 24th, 2020. And so this company has given me the opportunity to see my dad sober. And, I spent the last 5 years of my dad's life sober, and we were partners, and it was such a,
mm.
a, a beautiful relationship we got to reestablish. And so I'm so grateful because I was able to do that because of this company. And today we have 9 centers in 5 states, 450 employees, and we're impacting about 10,000 lives a year. And I'm
Mm.
so honored to say that I'm doing this and I'm living my father's legacy
Yeah.
because I know that both parents of mine would be extremely proud of the things that I'm doing today, and it's a direct result of them.
Yes, yes. I'm also. I would like to start to saying I'm so sorry for the loss of your father, and I'm so happy that he was able to get on that path of recovery and healing even before he passed away. Yeah, that's something good. Yeah, and just to add to what you said about your company or your centers, the We Level Up treatment centers. You offer services like medical detox, addiction treatment, mental health, therapeutic styles, different therapeutic styles, and you help a lot of people with different kinds of addiction, like maybe from cocaine or GHB or marijuana or heroin, all kinds of possible addictions out there. That's something awesome that you do to up to change people's life positively. That's awesome. That's great. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, once again, congratulations on 21 years of being sober. That's awesome. That's what would you say? What would you say has been like the greatest challenge for you? Being sober for 21 years. How have you been able to constantly stay on these paths?
So I would say like one of my biggest challenges that I've experienced is, intimate relationships.
Mm,
It's been very challenging for me, and relationships in general have been challenging for me because growing up, you know, the example or the model of relationships that I was exposed to were extremely dysfunctional. And so really like being able to have like friendships or intimate relationships or even partnerships, it takes a level of self-acceptance and self-love and appreciation and empathy to be in those types of relationships, because when somebody else that you're in a partnership with does something, it's
mm,
extremely hard not to take it personal, and it's extremely hard not to be reactive. And for a very long time, up until just recently, I was not so great at how I responded to a lot of my relationships. And so like what's
mm,
coming to me is the three dimensions of a relationship. And so the first dimension of a relationship, that relationship exists to only meet my needs. If we're in a relationship, Toby, and I'm in the first dimension of a relationship, all I care about is what's in it for me. All I care about is what you have that's going to benefit Ryan. And as
mm,
soon as you, Toby, stop giving me what I feel like I deserve or I need, then I move on from the relationship. And so there was a large time in my life, a large portion of my life when I was living in that dimension. I was so selfish. It was all about Ryan, selfishly all about Ryan. Poor Ryan. If you knew what I went through, you would understand why I'm being the way I'm being. And so that's
mm,
the first dimension of a relationship. The second dimension of a relationship, which I evolved to in 2016 when I started a partnership with a gentleman. And the second dimension of a relationship is what we call equality, right? It's you can also say like horse trading. And so society tells us today that it's all about equality, right? Like what's fair? Like let's be fair. So, Toby, if
mm,
I'm in that relationship with you, what's a fair relationship? Well, that means we have to keep score. If we're sitting here saying, like, hey, if I give you 5 jelly beans and you only give me 4 jelly beans, then now we're sitting here measuring, considering if this relationship is fair. And so, what
mm,
happens when you're in that dimension of a relationship? It becomes a conditional relationship. And so now I'm keeping score. And as soon as you, Toby, don't give me what I think is fair, now I'm going to remove myself from the relationship. I'm going to start being selfish. And that relationship doesn't exist and doesn't thrive. And so
mm,
that ended for me in 2019. That was when I had a breaking point and realized that this equal relationship style or this equality of a relationship, the second dimension of a relationship, doesn't exist and doesn't work for me because the
mm,
outcomes that I was receiving wasn't what I wanted. And so when I really took the next step in life was entering into the third dimension of a relationship, which would be, Toby, your needs are my needs. How can I serve you? What can I do in this relationship to meet your needs? And if I'm constantly obsessing how to meet your needs, you are always going to be fulfilled in that relationship. But here's the key to the third dimension of relationship. In order for me to fill your cup, I have to constantly fill my own cup. So there's a level of responsibility that's necessary in order to live in the third dimension of relationship. So I have to do my own work. I have to take care of myself. I have to feed my mind with positivity. I have to go to the gym and focus and work on my physiology so I have the conditioning to meet your needs, because as soon as my cup is empty, I'm incapable of delivering in the third dimension of a relationship. And so this journey that I've went through was such a beautiful transition and such a beautiful journey, although it wasn't easy. But now I can see how important it is to meet the needs of others and to serve them at the highest level. And because I'm doing that, the universe, the world is giving me more than I could have ever imagined.
Yes, that I believe that's where we all want to be, right? We want to be at that third level so that we could serve the world. We could be of good benefit to the world, and not just taking, but giving and impacting. And that way, we also get back the same way. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you made mention of something that is making me curious right now. Like, you talked about, yes, when you're of service to the world or to people, of course, you have to fill yourself up. You have to work in order to be, filled up, because you have to pour out from somewhere, right? You have to fill up your tank all the time. So kind of like be enlightening me or enlightening us a bit on how we could keep on filling our tank up and at the same time being of service to other people, like pouring into other people's life too.
Yeah, and so the first step, and so the objective really is to live in a beautiful state, right? So like
Yeah.
our emotional experience in life is the life that we live, and the emotional state that you live in is based on the meaning that you give life. So meaning equals emotion. Emotion is energy in motion. So where focus goes, energy flows, and so it's really what you're focusing on, right? And so for me, what's first most important is of the foundation of a beautiful state is your physiology, right? And so what I
Mm.
mean by that, how are you taking care of your body? How are you consuming enough nutrients, and are you eating a healthy diet? Are you feeling fatigued throughout the day, or do you feel like you're in tip-top shape? So like number 1 is get in the best physical shape you possibly can,
Mm.
because your focus will only go as far as your physiology will let you. And so if I'm trying to run a mile race, let's say the objective, our relationship, Toby, is compared to running a mile race. And if I can run a mile race under 6 minutes, which would be compared to us having an outstanding relationship, and I don't work on my physiology and I can't run a 6 minute mile, then that means that I'm going to be lazy. That means I'm going to want to give up. That means when things get difficult, I'm not going to want to step up to the plate. And so you have
Mm.
to really strengthen your physical body in order to withstand those emotional challenges. And so if we're in a relationship and you come up to me and you're like, I'm unhappy about this relationship and I'm feeling fatigued and I'm feeling lazy, I'm not hydrated, I'm not sleeping well, I'm going to respond to you in a much nastier way than if I was really taking care of myself. And so the first thing that needs to happen is your physiology, your
Mm.
posture. How are you sleeping at night? What are you consuming? Are you hydrating? Are you drinking a gallon of water a day? And so that's the first step. The second step is like what you're focused on, right? Like what you focus on, you feel. And like
Yeah.
I said earlier, focus goes where energy flows. Energy is emotions. Emotions is the experience of life that you have. So if I'm focusing on what I don't have, what emotions do you think I'm going to feel?
You feel emotions of emptiness, of lack, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And so if I'm focusing on what I do have, what emotions am I going to feel?
Abundance and gratitude. Yeah.
Exactly, gratitude. And so gratitude is the antidote to overcome any negative emotions. And so if
Mm.
I'm constantly focusing on what I can control, if I'm constantly focusing on what I do have, if I'm constantly focusing on the present moment, then my experience in life is going to be considerably different if I'm focusing on the opposite.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we should
So
focus on what we want for ourselves. Yeah. Hmm.
exactly. And so the second piece to that is our language and meaning, right? So language, and the language that we have to be careful about is, what are we saying about ourselves? Are we saying that I'm not good enough? Are we saying that I can't succeed in this task? Am I constantly, beating myself up because I'm not as far as I think I want to be? And so language is so important because language is attached to meaning. And if I tell myself
Mm.
I'm not good enough, then the meaning that I'm going to give that is that I'm a failure and that I'm never going to be good enough. And then the experience that I'm going to have is going to be a disempowering or a negative experience. And so that is the foundation of living in a beautiful state. There's only two states that you can live in. There's a state of suffering, and then there's living in a beautiful state. And so what will determine what state you're living in is the three pillars that I just gave you.
Hi, friend. Are you enjoying this episode? We would love to hear from you. Kindly send us a feedback. Are you following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, maybe on YouTube and other podcast platforms? Are you following us on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook? We would love to connect with you on all platforms. Links and further details are available in the show notes of this episode. Thank you. Well, I would love to go back to addictions and recovering back from recovering from addictions also. Um, from your 21 years of being sober and your expertise too, like you have contact with a lot of patients and you do this coaching also, the addiction coaching also for people. So can you teach us how we could successfully recover from any kind of addiction?
Yeah, and so the first step that is necessary is just like admitting, right? Like admitting that you have a problem. And it's not so much about being honest with others, which that is important. It's
Mm,
most important to be honest with yourself. And so just
mm,
admitting that you have this addiction, acceptance is the first step that's necessary in order to make change in your life. So I accept it. Okay, I'm addicted to drugs. I'm addicted to alcohol. I'm addicted to gambling. I'm addicted to, sex. I'm addicted to gambling, whatever it is. As soon as you accept it, then you have to make a decision to allow a power to come into your life that's greater than you. I have a relationship with God. I believe in God. And so for me, it was easy to make the decision that I know there's a God because of what happened to me October 8th, 2001. It was really
mm,
easy for me to realize that there's definitely something greater than me that is looking over me. And so that's the second step. The third step is the willingness to receive God's guidance, right? It's like my will versus God's will. My will got me in the trouble that I ended up in, right? So like my will, my decisions landed me at the crime scene October 8th, 2001. God's will was the one who decided that he was going to keep me alive, right? Because I
mm.
have no control over if I live or die. And clearly, I mean, I could
Yeah.
take my life, but like if I'm not committing suicide, outside of that, I really have no control, right? Like I can do things to potentially enhance or improve the outcome of my life by what I'm
Mhm.
consuming my body and my thoughts and my beliefs and how I'm taking care of myself. And then what I found is so important is really just identifying the resentments that you're living with, right? So like I used to walk around with so many resentments and I was so angry because of all the things that I went through as a child. I felt like people owed me something. I felt like the world owed me. I was so angry because of the childhood experience I went through. I literally would
Mhm.
walk through life resenting a lot of people, thinking that I was entitled to take what's mine. And so
Mhm.
by putting pen to paper and really seeing all the people that I was angry at, whether it was real or if it was made up, I was able to put that on paper. And then I got to see my part in it. Like how did I contribute to this situation that I'm so upset about? And once you're able to see your part in it, it's the first step of like taking responsibility, right? And so then
Mhm.
once you take responsibility, then it's like, okay, now how do I make amends to those people that I've hurt? Because what you realize is all those people that you put on the list that you're angry at, you have done something to those people as well. It takes two to dance. And so
Mhm.
once you get to see, like, I have also equally have done harm to these people, then it's an opportunity to go make amends. And that's when the real healing starts. Because
Yeah.
If I stole something from you, Toby, when we were kids growing up, and I sat down with you and said, "Hey, Toby, I want to make amends to you," and hey, Toby, do you remember when we were 16 and the $500 was stolen out of your room and you didn't know who it was? I
Yeah.
want you to know that was me, and I'm sorry. I was addicted to drugs and I want to make it right. So I'm going to give you back the $500. And so
Mm,
that level of making amends is so powerful because it really humbles you. You really get to see the damage that you've done in other people's lives,
mm,
right? And then the last three steps that are necessary are just like a daily um a day a daily review, a review of your day to determine once you did something wrong, you need to immediately make amends. And then the last step is to help somebody else. And
mm,
so as long as you do a daily reflection and identify, you know, did you act out that day? Did you get into old addictive behaviors? Are you upset at somebody? Did you offend somebody? And if you did, then immediately it's time to make amends, which which would be God's will. God forgave all of us, right? So God has already
yes.
forgiven all of us. So it's now my responsibility to also forgive. And so then
Mm.
the last step is like now I get to go help somebody.
Yes. Wow, wow, Ryan, that's so very important and very useful. Like, taking responsibility of the situation in our lives, not just blaming other people for what is happening to us or happening in our lives, and also making amendments and at the same time, having you saying that God has forgiven us already gives us that, or gives me that understanding that yes, I am forgiven. I also have to forgive myself of any wrongdoings I've done in the past, and I don't have to beat myself up for any bad thing. And that way, I let go of that pain, that hunger, basically, that I have towards myself, and the same thing to other people that have hurt me in some ways. And by the time I'm liberated from all of those pain and grudges, then I could help other people out there to come into the light. That's beautiful, right?
Yeah, man, for sure.
Yeah, but earlier when you were talking about your story and you were sharing about it a little bit, you talked about you talked briefly about setbacks or triggers also, for example, that could cause abuse of drugs or all of that. So can you teach us how to deal with temptations, how to deal with setbacks, and to deal with triggers when it comes to addictions?
Yeah, and so what I've learned along the way is when something external, which would be out of my control, whether it's entering into a new relationship, whether it's going to a bar, or somebody comes up and presents themselves to me, and something that they're doing affects me or triggers me to feel uneasy or to consider wanting to go out and relapse or use drugs. I understand that's something that I need to address with myself. And usually for me, it's a lack of my commitment to working my plan, right? So it's like you have to create a plan, and you have to be very specific with your plan. And so for me, it's like every day I wake up, I go to my office, I journal, I also fill out a gratitude journal. I read two prayers. I also do like a morning meditation, and then I immediately go to the gym to work on my body. And I'm drinking a gallon of water that entire day. I come home. I go right into the cold plunge. I have a cold plunge that's about 39 degrees, and I do about 7 minutes every day because every
Mm,
single day I want to strengthen that emotional muscle. And the emotional muscle that I want to strengthen is when my mind is trying to talk me out of doing what I know is in my best interest. I want to be able to strengthen that muscle so that I can push through and persevere. And
mm,
so it's so important to establish yourself with a very, very detailed plan. I literally live out of my calendar. I have today, I'm grateful I have a team around me that keeps me accountable, that keeps me aligned with my daily planning. And so
Mm,
surrounding yourself with the right people are going to be able to support you to keep you on track. And so
mm,
there's a couple times throughout my day when I'm feeling exhausted and I'm feeling burnt out and I don't feel like doing a podcast or I don't feel like recording content or I don't feel like making a phone call. They're like, "Hey, this is what you signed up for. This is your
yeah.
commitment. You made the commitment, not me." And then I'm like, "All right, I guess I got to do it." And so it's like who you surround yourself is so important. You want
Mm,
to see where you're going in life. Look at the sum of the five people that are around you the most, and that is going to be exactly where you're going to end up. And so you have to improve the people you're around. You have to, if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to change the room.
mm,
Putting yourself in a room or putting yourself around people that are much further than you are in life and actually have traveled the path that you want to go down, they're going to be able to show you through their life experience what it takes to become that version. And so who you surround yourself with is so important. And the truth is the foundation of all of this is having a conscious contact and relationship with a higher power. I choose to call mine God. That is the foundation of everything that I have because God has given me this beautiful life. I have nothing but grace and gratitude because of all the things that I've all the things that I've been through. And so with
mm.
that foundation, everything else is easy. Everything else is a piece of cake, is a walk in the park.
Yeah, that's so deep. I mean, yeah, I also believe that having God as that pillar and center of our lives helps us to go through any storm of life, and we're able to, stand out or stand up, even whenever we tend to fall or whatever, and we, go through life with that confidence that yes, we have a Father, we have a God who has our back basically in case anything happens, and He can calm the storm for us and give us the strength to just pull through. And one thing I learned from what you said earlier is when you were talking about it, I just got that reflection in my mind that sometimes the best things for ourselves or for our lives are the most difficult things for us to do. And like, you taking that cold plunge for 7 minutes, it's a very, very difficult thing to do, but it's good to build up your resilience and to build up your emotional strength.
Yeah, 100%, man. Because at the end of the day, life's gonna give you worthy opponents, and if you're not conditioning yourself to address those worthy opponents, you're gonna
Mm,
just give up and you're gonna just continue to spiral. Because at the end of the day, like if you're not growing biologically, physically, emotionally, spiritually, then you're living in a state of suffering. And so
mm,
you have to constantly work on all areas of your life, constantly improve all areas of your life. And if you have that daily practice, then life is going to be a dance.
mm,
When the life throws a worthy opponent at you, you're not going to be discouraged. You're going to be prepared. You're going to be ready for it because I'll tell you this, nothing in God's world happens by mistake. And so if the universe is presenting you with a worthy opponent, that means that you are ready to take on that challenge. But if you're not conditioning yourself emotionally, spiritually, physiologically, then you are not going to be able to overcome or take on that battle. And so for me today, life throws me a worthy opponent. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's challenging. Yes, it's painful at times, but I laugh because I know I'll get through it. I know when I get to the other side, I'm going to have a ton of lessons, and I'm extremely grateful for that. And the day that stops is the day my heart stops beating. And so I'm up for the challenge. I'm
mm,
grateful that God has given me this beautiful life that I have to pursue these challenges and to
mm,
overcome them and to accomplish them. And so what I've learned is life is all about who you're becoming, right? And so
mm.
all those challenges are going to teach you how to be a better version of yourself. And so I constantly pursue challenging moments so that I can strengthen all these emotional parts of me so that I can be the best version of myself.
Yes, we have to always strive to be the best version of ourselves every day, every time. And you made mention of some things that we could make use of already, like journaling and um, having a calendar, having a plan for our lives, basically, or for our day, actually, too. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And also, I know you talked briefly about this, like, being in a room where everyone there is, pushing you forward, helping you to, fulfill your purpose and improve in life, basically. But I think like some other things we could also put into place in order to improve our performance, in order to improve our, our output, our mindset also.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so the human mind wants to find evidence to support its belief systems, right? So we all,
Mm,
as humans, have belief systems, and every single person in life is where they are at that very time based on their belief systems. And so you ask me, like, Ryan, what's changed for you over the last 10 years? My belief systems, what I believe about myself, what I believe about others, my belief on the meaning I give life. And
mm,
so sometimes when you're around people that have a belief system that you want to step into at some point, sometimes we need to borrow their belief system. Sometimes I might not be strong enough. I might not be conditioned enough to believe that I'm capable. But putting yourself around people that do believe and that believe in you, even though you don't believe in yourself, sometimes is necessary in order for you to get to the next level in life.
yes. Belief system. I'm talking about belief system. I want to learn from you. How can we liberate ourselves from all these mental chains that we sometimes have, these limiting beliefs that bind us and prevent us from operating at our fullest capacity? How can we turn that around?
Yeah, and so the first thing is we need to identify what the belief system is, or the limiting belief, right? And so I'll share
Mhm,
you one of my limiting beliefs. So I was, and I was 6 or 7 years old, and my sister passed away when I was 5. So I didn't really go to school much. School wasn't such a priority for me. And so my parents got me this program called Hooked on Phonics Works for Kids. And so it's for kids that had learning disabilities. And so I adopted this belief, this limiting belief that I had a learning disability. And it was reaffirmed every single time my friends would come over because my friends would make fun of me. They would poke fun at me, they would tease me about it, and I would go talk to my parents. And my parents, they didn't support me, they didn't reassure me. And so I carried that through my life that I have this learning disability. And so I've been wanting to speak on podcasts, talk on stages for the last 5 years. 2 of those 5 years, I didn't even do anything about it. I was like, I knew I wanted to do it, but I didn't take any action to do it because I was so scared because this limiting belief that I have a learning disability and I'm uneducated and I'm incapable of communicating prevented me from serving millions of people. Year 3 comes, I realize that this limiting belief is causing me to not to take action, which was starving so many people. And so I was actually at Tony Robbins' house and I went through this breakthrough process. And the theme or the consensus for me during that weekend was quit playing small because I was so scared, I was so intimidated that I was going to be judged, that people were going to make fun of me. I was so scared I was going to relive that childhood experience, and I wasn't going to be able to serve and make an impact or help people. And so I was like, all right, I'm done with that. And I just started taking action. And so I launched my first personal development seminar. There was like 50, 60 people in the room, and I did the best that I could. And the success and the win was just showing up and doing it. Was it my best performance? No. My first 10 probably weren't that good. But the win was the fact that I was doing something I didn't want to do. The win was I was doing everything in my power to impact the people's lives that were sitting in front of me. And so, what this brings to me is there's 3 parts of the brain: there's the thinking brain, there's the doing brain, and then there's the being brain. And so, for 3 years, all I did was think about it. Like, I want to be a public speaker. I want to do seminars. I want to be an influencer. I want to be a facilitator of change. I didn't do shit about it. I just thought about it. That was it. I was in the thinking part of my brain.
Mm.
2020, I was like, all right, I'm done with that. I needed to find leverage. And the leverage that I needed to find was there were so many people in this world that would love to learn from me, that I could impact, that I could make a difference, that I could influence, that I could be a facilitator of change. So immediately I stopped making it about me. I stopped being selfish and I started focusing on the people that I can serve. And I started doing it. I just got my reps in. I just kept showing up, kept doing it, non negotiable. Don't quit. Don't give up. Just keep getting the reps, keep getting the reps, keep getting the reps. This has happened for a little over 2 years now. I've done 20 personal development seminars. I'm on my 13th podcast. I've done speeches in front of my organization probably a couple hundred times. And so now I'm starting to become this version that you're experiencing from me. Everything I'm telling you is a practice of my life today. This isn't just something that I've learned. This is what I do on a daily basis. This is the
Mm.
language that I speak on a daily basis. I have 450 employees, and I literally say the same thing to every single employee every single time. Everything that I'm telling you is a practice that I live today. And now I'm in the being brain, right? This is unconscious pattern now. It's second nature to me. And so the lesson is you have to execute, right? Execution trumps knowledge any day of the week. Execution trumps knowledge any day of the week. So once you execute and you're consistently executing over and over and over again, eventually doing it long enough, it's going to become a part of who you are. It's going to become who you are representing in life at any moment because it's so in your nervous system. It's such a part of you that it becomes second
Mm.
nature.
Yeah. Wow. What you just said right now is execution is way better than just knowledge, basically. Like it's wanting to know something is another thing to actually put that knowledge into action. And that's the most important thing. Put everything that you know into action and be consistent with that and just keep on improving on that. That's deep, right?
Yeah. And I'll tell you
Yeah.
this, like what I've learned is that, and even for me, like I wanted to skip the suck, right? I wanted to skip the pain. I wanted to start something and go to
Mm.
good, to great, to the best. Like that's my mind. Like I want instant gratification. I don't want to start something and suck. So what I would do in life, I would be selective. I would do things that I was really good at. I would avoid the things that I wasn't good at because I was embarrassed to fail. And so another learning lesson that I've established over my time is only do the things that you suck at. Like I suck at reading books, so I do my best to read books. I used to suck at doing presentations, so I did presentations. I used to be scared to death to speak in front of people, so I leaned in and started speaking in front of people. I didn't want to do podcasts, so I signed up for podcasts. I didn't want to build content on my social media, so I started building content on my social media. And now I've been
Mm.
doing it a little bit of time, and I'm starting to see the progress. And I'm like, okay, I have some momentum. I'm just going to keep building on that momentum. So you can't build on failure. You can only build on success. And so success is only based on your focus. I can look at how I've sucked or I can look at how I've progressed. And so if you're
Mm.
focusing on the success, you're starting to build up some momentum. And momentum is an object in motion that stays in motion unless it's interrupted by some outside force. And so the only outside force that could interrupt me is if I allow my belief system to stop doing the very thing that I'm doing.
Mm, yes, yes. Build, just keep on building momentum. Wow. What,
Right.
Ryan, I've learned so much from you in this conversation. Like a lot of wisdom packed into this short episode that we've already had so far. Um, if if there's a word of advice you could give someone out there who is in a very dark state right now, going through a lot of challenges or troubles in life, or maybe struggling with one addiction or the other, what would that word of advice be?
Yeah, first I would say I've been right where you are. I've been at a lot of very low points in my life, times in my life when I didn't even want to live anymore. And what
Mm,
I can tell you, when I was faced with those experiences, there was this little voice inside my head that would give me the answer that I knew I needed to do. And I know sometimes the right thing to do or what's in the best interest of me is the most difficult decision to make. And it all goes down to making that difficult decision. And so for me, my first difficult decision was when I got sued by the FTC and my fiance left me. I had to face all of my childhood traumas that I've been avoiding up until that point. And facing it meant I had to deal with it. Facing it meant that I had to heal through it. That means I had to go through the pain. That doesn't mean I get to step around the pain or avoid the pain. The only way that you're going to ever get to where you want to be in life is you have to face the pain. You have to face the challenges. You have to push through what's difficult. And if you push through what's difficult, eventually what's impossible becomes possible.
Mm.
And so then once you've seen this over and over again, then the next time you get to a low point, it's not going to be so difficult.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks so much for that. Yes. Just keep on. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of things that I'm going to take away from this podcast episode. I'm going to re-listen again and use it. And I believe everyone who has listened out there has taken more than two things that could help them to improve their lives or even help them to recover from whatever addictions that they are going through right now. If there's someone out there who has any questions or maybe wants to connect with you or maybe wants to make use of your services, what's the best way to connect and work with you?
Yeah, so I would say the easiest way would be just to follow me on my social media. My Instagram handle is ryan.zofay. That's Zofay. Follow me on Instagram. We publish all of our seminars. You can DM me if you have any specific questions. I have a team that will respond and answer. And we do personal development seminars. It's free to the public. So we do them every 6 to 8 weeks. It's in South Florida. So if you're flying from out of state, it's a beautiful town. It's South Florida. It's the best place to be, right? And so it's a 2-day seminar, and
Mm.
I actually facilitate, the majority of the seminar. I have a team that does support me in the process, and we see massive transformation throughout this weekend. And a lot of the feedback that has been given is literally you're doing 10 years of therapy or 10 years of like deep work inside of one weekend. And so it's open to all those that want to come. I would love nothing more than to experience it with you because I know what it's done for me, and I know that's given me the opportunity to become the man I am today. And so I'd love nothing more than to be a part of anybody's journey that wants to be on the journey with me.
Yes, that's awesome. I'm going to place the link to your Instagram in the show note of this episode, the link to your website also in the show note of this episode. So I encourage everyone out there who has listened so far to connect with you on Instagram for sure. If they have any questions, they could slide into your DMs and get their answers to the questions. And also, yeah, if they are in need of any service, they could fly over to South Florida for that. Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate this wonderful conversation. It has been a big blessing to me. A lot of things I've learned already from this. Thank you. I appreciate them.
Yeah, you're welcome, brother. Thank you.
Wow, you made it to the very end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'm grateful for your time, your love, and your contributions. Subscribe, like, review, and share this podcast. God bless you. Bye. Bye.